Mariel Rivera is a doctoral candidate at Syracuse University in the Department of Anthropology. Her research interests are within medical anthropology with a specific focus on reproductive health. She is interested in how race and gender influence reproductive and maternal health experiences. For her doctoral research, she is focusing on the use of community-based doulas in Syracuse, New York, who specifically work with Black women and other women of color. We are so incredibly excited and honored for you to be joining us today as our keynotes. We'll air applause from everybody. And anything you need for sharing permissions or anything like that, definitely let us know, and we're going to turn the floor over to you. Presentation time is from now until 12:40, and then we're going to have 20 minutes of Q&A time.
Perfect. All right. I'm so excited to be here with everyone. Loving hearing all of these important conversations that we're having today. Of course, let's make sure. Can everybody see my screen right now? Okay, cool. So I am so excited to be here with you all today. I wanted to thank everybody from the speakers to the Rochester Sexual and Reproductive Justice Coalition. I'm really honored to be your keynote speaker and to be featured alongside these other important conversations and speakers. So I'm going to discuss really my experiences as a birth worker as well as a researcher who looks at birth work. So my talk today is entitled Reproductive Justice Towards Addressing Maternal Health Inequities, Centering Black and Brown Communities.
Real quick before you move on, Mariel, I want to let you know that you're showing the presentation portion so we can see all your notes.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's try this again then. There we go. How's that?
Much better on my end.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for letting me know.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so just a little bit about me. I identify as Latinx. I am a PhD candidate at Syracuse University, as it was mentioned, and I was actually born and raised in Rochester, New York. Just moved back recently from Syracuse, so excited to get more involved with the reproductive justice work happening here as well. I have been a certified doula and worked alongside Village Birth International and Doula for a Queen since 2014 or 2018. And I was actually trained in community doula or community-based birth work through Village Birth International. So they actually have their own specific community-based training that is essentially intentionally focused on the issues within Syracuse. So that really local specific type of birth work. And it's really important for me to demonstrate my dual positionality in this work as a community birth worker and researcher, because for me, both of my identities are part of my passion to address maternal health inequities for Brown and Black folks in this country. I view both my doula work and research really as a key part or portion of elevating the work that is being done at the community level to improve maternal health overall. And as many people know, maternal health care in the United States as a whole is much more expensive than many other countries. However, we still have poor maternal health outcomes. And we can really see this when we discuss things like the realities women face, including risks of death or injury during childbirth. And the fact that these statistics have been increasing is really alarming. So recent studies have shown that maternal mortality is about 20.1 deaths per 100,000 live births, according to the CDC, as of 2019. So essentially, out of every 100,000 births, 20 birthing people have died because of a birth or pregnancy-related complication. And that could be up to a year after giving birth. So it's important to really admire and see this work that doulas are doing when they are moving past a framework of postpartum period and 6 weeks after giving birth, right? Moving to a framework where we're actually seeing the holistic experience of a postpartum individual and how that care must extend to a year and sometimes more. And the CDC really also found instances of severe maternal morbidity, which are near losses, injuries during birth, and traumatic births. And we've seen that they have actually tripled. So from 1994 to 1990, or from 1993 to 1994, we can see that that percentage was less than 1%, so at 0.48%. However, that has increased. So data from 2013 and 2014 has showed that maternal morbidity actually increased, more than doubled to 1.42%. And yet we still know that there are many individuals who face traumatic or near losses and undergo traumatic birth experiences that are undocumented. Significantly, when we look to understand the United States maternal health care experiences and outcomes, it's really important to focus on how systems of oppression, such as race, gender, class, and more, become connected for marginalized folks accessing maternal health care. Black and Brown maternal health care experiences, outcomes, and care itself involve disparities that affect them due to their intersecting identities of both race and gender. And one thing I've really learned as a researcher as well as a doula is that pregnancy is not only about the physical act of pregnancy, and this is something we've all touched on today. It's more about meeting the basic needs of the parenting person, having their mental health become a priority, supporting them and affirming their feelings, and just going beyond what we think of as traditional prenatal and postpartum care. Having positive maternal health care outcomes is not only about the medical side, but also about seeing the birthing person as a full person. However, the maternal health care in this country really lacks a holistic scope and does not actually view individuals as full people when we look at their maternal health care. And this oftentimes is leading to the poor maternal health outcomes we are seeing. And one of the realities that's really driven my research is what Black women specifically face in this country, or Black birthing people, I should say, specifically face in this country when they are trying to have a baby or access maternal health care. And we can see this really jarring statistic where Black individuals are 2.5 times more likely to have maternal mortality, to be lost due to a complication of their childbirth or of their reproductive experiences. And this is a really shocking statistic that a lot of people have used to kind of launch their own work in this space. And what we know is that marginalized birthing folks, especially Black birthing folks, suffer these poor maternal health outcomes because of their racialized or othered status in a society where we can really see the legacy of the oppressive structures. These systems of oppression have real influences over people's bodies, birth, and babies. As a doula and researcher, I've really come to understand the gaps we see in maternal health care. And indeed, reproductive justice gives us a lens to see the intersections of many oppressions operating on maternal health care. So these health disparities extend to worse rates of fetal death, maternal morbidity, and preterm birth for Black birthing people in this country. And importantly, maternal mortality for Black birthing people is not only due to their experiences during pregnancy and childbirth. Instead, racial disparities in birth outcomes are linked to effects of differential exposure that occur throughout the life course. So a term like weathering is really useful here, where we see how exposure to racism, exposure to poverty, exposure to all of these different prejudices or systems of oppression are going to weigh on the body. They're going to have an impact on your body, and that will show up in the birthing space. And it's really important to note the reality many birthing people face when we talk about availability versus accessibility. We know we live in a nation where we have the availability of many different resources, but we also know that that does not equate accessibility. And this could mean accessibility of a variety of things, from services to transportation, from lack of access to technology, or having your basic needs met, like food insecurity. And this issue of access is something that as a doula and as somebody part of a doula collective, we have really tried to address. The importance of not only providing doula services at low or no cost, but also connecting our clients and giving them access to other important aspects of maternal health. And usually a lot of our care falls outside of what we typically think of as prenatal or postpartum care. And so for us, it's evident that although we have a medically sophisticated society, there is still a need to offer non-medical services and support, especially for parents who may not have resources. So from my experience as a birth worker and researcher, there are still many gaps in the care Black and brown birthing people are receiving. Many of the doulas and clients I have worked with in the doula collective have spoken about their experience with maternal health in this country. And some of these quotes are from my own research, part of my doctoral research, and really just interviewing Black birthing people and Black doulas to understand their experiences better. So Savan, a Black doula client, discussed her first experience giving birth without a doula and as a first-time mom. Her experience was so traumatic that she was not sure she would have another child. She told me, I ended up having a C-section. I was in the hospital for a little while. I experienced microaggressions and prejudice. It was weird. It was traumatic. It was weird. It was anxiety inducing. It was just, I didn't like it at all. It was not a good experience. So that's what led me to say, this has to be different. I'm not going through that again if I'm going to have another child. Because for a while, I didn't think I was going to have another child. I was like, I'm not going to have any more kids because that was way too much. And from this experience that Savan faced, many other Black birthing people have also echoed these sentiments, so much so that they question whether or not they would have additional children. Unfortunately, this is a constant reality that we can see throughout our nation when talking with Black and brown birthing people. A birth worker, Sequoia, who I have worked with closely and is part of my doula collective, noted during a presentation she gave about the importance of listening to women and hearing what their experiences are. She stated, the barriers that were identified from Black women, women of color, women who had negative experiences with obstetrics and gynecology was access to healthcare. So many women felt that the providers were not listening to them, that they were not given enough time with providers at their appointments, and that few providers reflected their lived experiences. They also identified a barrier of lack of information and education from providers, racism and its impact on quality care received, disrespect from healthcare providers, and also support staff and administrative staff. Sequoia's quote here really demonstrates the state of maternal health care and how it is a multi-pronged concern. We're not just talking about availability, but also about accessibility. We're not just talking about structural or institutional forms of racism, but also interpersonal forms of racism that clients feel when interacting with healthcare providers. There is a clear lack of information, and we can point to education not coming from providers, and even discussions about out-of-hospital options. From these experiences, many community members have come together to improve the availability of maternal health resources. And we can see this through reproductive justice activists. We can see this through the emergence of more out-of-hospital birthing options, as well as community-based birth workers. And I first became aware of reproductive justice probably online about 2015 or 16. And I really just started to see an overwhelming discussion about birth workers, especially doulas. I was definitely intrigued and wanted to figure out how I could connect to this movement, not only as a researcher, but in a more hands-on way. And I was called to this birth work and doula work because of the way in which this is on the front lines in many ways of maternal health. and the potential I saw to make substantial change in maternal health experiences. So reproductive justice, as we all have been talking about today, is really seen as a praxis for eradicating inequalities in reproduction. The praxis of reproductive justice is based on a rich history of Black feminist thought and is only a theoretical, it's not only a theoretical framework, but also a political movement as well. I use this praxis within my own research and activism to center Brown and Black reproductive experiences, perspectives, and solutions. And I really resonate with this specific definition or framework of reproductive justice, which defines it as a movement building and organizing framework that identifies how reproductive oppression is the result of the intersection of multiple oppressions and is inherently connected to the struggle for social justice and human rights. So this definition really emphasizes the structural inequalities that women of color face and people of color face in reproductive matters. Birth justice is a more specific application of reproductive justice to birth, and it essentially emphasizes the right to give birth, with whom, where, when, and how a person chooses. Myself and my fellow doulas utilize birth justice and reproductive justice to support our clients through their birth and reproductive experiences. In using this framing, there is a need to center women of color's experiences in context with overarching institutions that enable these unequal experiences. This allows discussions of health to move away from discussing health as an individual circumstance to one that is influenced by historical inequalities and systems of oppression. Today, we can really see that birth justice and reproductive justice have taken off, and there is an increasing awareness about the perspectives and how they connect to experiences of reproduction, birth, and beyond. I personally do a lot of research through social media. I like to call it digital ethnography, and we know that social media is a place where people are connecting and meeting and developing their own cultures and societies. So for me, just giving a small snapshot of how we can see this movement really unfold on social media. And specifically, these are just 2 pictures I took on Instagram just to show everyone how there's really such a proliferation and a growth of the amounts of posts, conversations, and pages that are focusing on birth and reproductive justice. So what really is a birth worker? A birth worker is a pretty broad term name, and it can be used by doulas, midwives, lactation consultants, and more. Essentially, anyone who works in birth or something related to birth can be considered a birth worker. There's really been particular attention placed on doulas and the ways in which doulas provide non-medical support to birthing people and their families during the perinatal period. Again, another way to address that gap in the maternal health care. We can also see that there are different types of doulas. I personally have trained as a community-based doula, and throughout this presentation, I'll use doulas and birth workers interchangeably. So we have seen a larger discussion of birth workers, mostly doulas, and how they can combat the realities of Black and other marginalized parents. Here are just a few examples of the influence birth workers, especially doulas, are having on maternal health. However, the headlines also allude to the broken maternal health care system in this country, especially for Black birthing folks. So some of them, just quickly, we can see one headline saying doulas and midwives could help the Black maternal and infant mortality crisis. Another headline stating these Black doulas are taking on Iowa's maternal mortality crisis. Another stating why Black doulas matter, where to find them. Additional one saying growing doula industry aims to combat infant mortality. So all of these are, while they are complementing doulas and birth workers alike, they're also alluding to the fact that we have a broken maternal health care system, especially for Black women. And the evidence that doulas improve birth outcomes has been well documented. Research has found that women with continuous labor support are more likely to give birth without the aid of medical interventions, such as cesarean sections, which is important given we know that many complications occur because of medical interventions that are unnecessary, namely cesarean sections. We can also see that doulas are linked to less use of pain medications. Individuals are more satisfied with their birth compared to usual care, and there aren't any adverse side effects. Doula care during the prenatal period has been found to lower the odds of preterm labor by 22% as well. And doulas during the postpartum period can intervene if a birthing parent is facing postpartum depression symptoms and provide support and resources to their clients. However, it is important to note that there are specific types of doulas. And as I mentioned, I consider myself, along with my doula collective, to be part of the community-based doulas. So really, community-based doulas are ways in which doulas have been trained and live within the community they serve. These doulas often share the same background, race, gender, ethnicity, and more with their clients, which allows them to form stronger relationships. They are usually provide extended services, sliding scale payments, low to no cost care. And many of the community-based doulas utilize a reproductive justice model within their care. Many are also Black and Brown parents themselves who can give advice and understanding others may not have. These are some of the important distinctions that differentiate traditional doulas and community-based doulas. After learning about the inequities in care for folks of color and other marginalized populations, I wanted to elevate, become involved with, and better understand community-based solutions for Brown and Black folks. I was so lucky to happen to listen to a talk from two of my doula sisters, Esther and Sequoia in Syracuse, that demonstrated their passion for this work and the way in which their organizations were rooted in community care, as well as centered around reproductive justice. Utilizing reproductive justice is definitely a visible way many birth workers approach their work in the community. I was drawn to understand and become involved in solutions for maternal health that were really based in naming and addressing oppressive solutions or systems. Through these organizations, I gained a doula collective, a sisterhood, knowledge, and a sense of the hopeful future of maternal health. My work along with my fellow doulas has really been rooted in the community. This is not only extended to our community doula work with clients, but also to our work in public health of the community. Indeed, this also extends to each of us as we, as doulas, doula the doula. More of this in a little bit. But how can we actually view birth work in action? I'm going to touch on some of the key principles of community-based doula work that sets it apart from traditional doulas, and how my doula collective has implemented these principles through our work. And I'll do this by touching on my own experiences as well as interviews that I have conducted with doula clients and doulas themselves. And I'm going to use this principles laid out in the article, Advancing Birth Justice, Community-Based Doula Models as a Standard of Care for Ending Racial Disparities. This piece was actually written really recently, 2019, and two of the founding members of Village Birth International were co-authors alongside other community-based doulas. This article gives an overview of community doula work and how it can address maternal health disparities, particularly for Black birthing folks. So these first three principles I'll touch on really focus on the framework of care that community doulas engage with, centering reproductive justice, as well as we can see the first framework touches on human rights. Additionally, there is a focus on moving beyond traditional doula work to reframe our idea of how experiences over a person's life contribute to their maternal health care. So the first principle here states incorporating a human rights framework to address physical, emotional, psychological, and social elements of health. The fundamental right to health is centered and focuses on making sure services are available, accessible, acceptable, and of excellent quality. The second principle is to expand the traditional doula framework beyond the perinatal, birth, and postpartum periods to a model that connects maternal health advocacy and direct engagement with the communities in which we live in the US. And lastly, to recognize that respectful maternity care includes reframing the experiences of childbirth, not as a single medical event, but as a series of experiences over a person's lifespan that transitions the individual into parenthood. As community-based doulas, we have been trained to understand how to implement reproductive justice within our approaches to birth work. And part of this work is identifying how we can best serve our clients in a holistic way, not just taking care of what is seen as prenatal or postpartum needs, but seeing how we can address their needs as an individual to ensure they can achieve the birth or reproductive outcome they desire. While speaking at a conference, Sequoia mentioned the type of care work we provide. She said, as community-based doulas, we realize that our clients require far more emotional support and physical support. So this may mean us showing up to doctor's appointments. This may mean us cooking meals when they have severe nausea and can't get out of bed. This means dropping off materials, wipes, Pampers, mutual aid. And we aim not only to not only improve the birthing experience of our clients, but also meet their material needs to the best of our ability. This work goes beyond what traditional birth work usually does to ensure the needs of our clients are met, even if it seems outside of our scope of practice. Any birth worker rooted in birth or reproductive justice must emphasize the meeting of the needs of our clients or connecting them to resources that can meet their needs. This helps to bridge gaps in maternal health care and allows us to move away from conversations of availability to accessibility. Through my interviews, I also noticed many parents' experience demonstrated how community-based birth workers provide care rooted in reproductive justice and understand that we must go beyond traditional doula roles and expectations for our clients to ensure they have the best care. During our interview, Ziera, a Black doula client, discussed her relationship with her doula, although her daughter was over a year old. She told me, and even with the postpartum, she always calls. She even still calls me, like, hey, what's going on with the baby? Or I'll see her out and she'll be like, where's my baby? Where's my baby? She made her some shoes and a jacket that was really cute that she wore and already grew out of. It was really nice to know that you had a motherly presence there, even though I didn't have a mom. From this quote, it's clear that doula work does not end for us once you are 6 months or a year postpartum. We are always there for our clients as birth workers. We understand that support is needed throughout pregnancy, and our experiences span beyond birth and parenting. That is why so many of us have meaningful relationships with our clients that are long-lasting. Ziera built a motherly bond with her doula, and they maintain that relationship still. We are building and growing relationships with each other. That is a piece of our community doula work. And so some of the next principles I'm going to focus on really highlight the way we can see reproductive justice come into the principles of community-based doulas. They really explicitly address the systems of oppression and how they impact inequities in maternal health care. So the first principle is to center a culture of care and recognize the intersections of health and racial equity. The interrelation of health equity and the relationship of health equity to a pregnant person's access to care and their choice of providers. The next principle states to address intergenerational trauma of people of color and centered communities to incorporate their lived experiences and recognize the direct impact of trauma and stress on infant and maternal health. For many doula clients, having a doula who looks like them, comes from the same community, or has a similar background is important. Indeed, having a doula with the same background can have advantages for the birthing person, as we see mentioned in the headlines earlier. And during our interview, Anjali, a Black doula client, mentioned the importance of having a woman of color be her doula in our interview. She explained to me, I've been praying for a doula, and she was a woman of color. And I ran home and told my husband and said, we need her. So yes, I was very excited to have a woman of color doula. Many doula clients expressed their clear desire to have a doula that shared their identity as a person of color because of comfortability. It is clear that sharing some identity can come with important unspoken realities that others may not connect with. This is why there has been such an emphasis on the role of Black doulas and their involvement in eradicating maternal health inequities. As doulas, we also bring in our perspective from our own reproductive experiences as Black and brown folks. During my interview with Tanea, a Black doula and mother, she reflected on her experiences as a doula, how this is rooted in reproductive justice, and how this has reflected her experiences as a Black birthing person. She emphasized to me, I think because of my experiences as a Black woman, it's given me compassion for young mothers, for young women who may be single or may not have partners. It has allowed me to think and process the ways that I have been a mother or have mothered others, and then how to share that with other people. From this, we can really see how experiences as Black or brown birth workers can influence the support and care you give your clients. Indeed, because of the shared identity with our clients, there is an ability to connect that may allow for deeper support to be achieved. Now, this set of principles really focuses on education, support, and parents being active participants in decision-making and reproductive choices. We can see this mostly with the passion myself and other doulas have for providing education and support for our clients to feel they can make decisions for themselves, their babies, and their families. First, there is the principle to support the development of a reproductive life plan that provides non-directive, non-coercive, and fully informed options that are family-driven and culturally relevant. Then, we touch on the prioritize self-determination, compassion, and trust in the individual wisdom of families served. Community-based doulas lead with the understanding that choice, access, and informed shared decision-making in pregnancy, childbirth, and reproductive care are central to improving outcomes. Assistance in preparing for and carrying out a pregnant person's plan for their childbirth that affirms their race, gender, sexuality, and cultural and religious beliefs and practices. For many clients, the education piece of doula care was vital to their decision to be supported by a doula. During our interview, Ashley, a Black doula client, reflected on the importance of education and knowing that doulas bring to their clients. She mentioned, definitely the knowledge, because the things she told me about my decision, my options, it wasn't things I got from my nurse. It wasn't things I got at office visits. It's like without knowing the stuff, they don't push you. So it's definitely good to have somebody who knows the rules and know what's okay and what's not okay. And just being able to call her whenever I have questions and to have someone with honest answers give it to you, you know, just freehand, like, hey, can you check this for me? And she's readily available. I like the knowledge piece. So here we can really again see the importance of education that was provided by doulas. Without this education, Ashley feels like she wouldn't have known a lot of important information about her body, pregnancy, and birth. It's clear that doulas bring important information to their clients that may have not had access to previously. This is a very telling sign of the state of prenatal care with many birthing people reflecting that they felt they did not receive proper education from their health professionals. From the doula's perspective, we know the importance of educating our clients so they feel confident about making decisions about their bodies, birth, and babies. Without proper education, we cannot make informed medical decisions and feel like we have a voice. During our interview, Tree, a Black doula, mother, and nurse, reflected on how she ensures her clients are educated. She told me, I print off a whole list of what a prenatal visit should look like. So they're going in with this. And 9 times out of 10, what I learned is when you go in prepared, the doctor knows he better be on his A game because there is someone that is aware of what should and shouldn't be done. So to empower and provide education and knowledge and resources and a community around that mom and the family. This again demonstrates the importance for us as doulas to provide education to our clients and how this may influence the level of care a client receives from their providers. This also allows our client to feel comfortable about making informed decisions on their reproductive and childbirth choices. One of the most important experiences I have had was assisting in the creation of a childbirth education class. Here I am sitting next to Sequoia at our very first childbirth education class. We worked so hard to prepare for this course, and throughout our planning, we were intentional about including specific images and discussions. The classes were open to all, but were really created for and by Black and birthing people. They are also queer affirming and inclusive of all genders. The courses are free and provide a series similar to ones given at hospitals and other spaces, which can cost a lot of money. This may not be accessible for all individuals who wish to gain knowledge about childbirth, and they may not intentionally center Black or brown birthing folks or offer queer affirming perspectives. The class was also intentionally located in the south side of Syracuse, which is an under-resourced part of the city. We wanted to ensure that we are not only having these types of resources available, but that they are accessible to those who need them most. This again moves beyond birth as an individual experience to one that is influenced by the community and centered access for all community members. Even through COVID, the Doula Collective has developed virtual childbirth classes that are tailored to Black and brown and Indigenous birthing people and are queer affirming. A piece of doula work that is often discussed is really the creation of a birth plan. So this is also clear in traditional doula work, and it's pretty standard in almost all types of doula work, but almost all of the clients and doulas that I have talked to have pointed to this as a main way of gaining education. They feel like they are educated and prepared to make decisions about their bodies and their babies and what they would like their birth to look like. And they really point to the fact that having a birth plan in place allows them to carry out their desires in the birthing space, allows them to have the most knowledge and make decisions about their bodies. And it's also a great way for them to discuss their specific plans and questions with their healthcare provider. So as I mentioned, the creation of a birth plan was something that doula clients and doulas themselves mentioned during our interviews. And it was definitely an important way to gain education and to actually think about what birth you envision for yourself, as many of us have not thought about that possibly even today. But during our interview, Jakia, a Black doula client, really emphasized her experience creating a birth plan with her doula. She told me, and she knew so much information. I had so many questions, just like getting my son circumcised, having a birth plan, and my doula basically helped me find that information. Like, this is what happens if you do this. If you have a birth plan, you should give it to your doctor. And she really helped me with advocating for myself. So it's evident from Jakia's experience and many others that the creation of a birth plan is an important part of doula care and helps clients talk with their providers. This is another way that we are able to give birthing people a voice and say in their birthing process. From the doula's perspective, having a birth plan can also help us encourage our clients or advocate for them. During our interview, Raynette, a Black doula and mother, mentioned the importance of creating a birth plan with your clients as a doula, as well as talking through what they desire in a birth experience. She told me, there are going to be times where you're kind of stuck and the doula can remind you of what you wanted to do in terms of your birth plan. They also can help guide you through the decision-making process, console you for things not happening the way you planned, and think that it is necessary because it is such a sacred time. So developing a birthing plan really allows a doula to know what you desire during birth, allows them to encourage you to follow your plan, and even advocate for you if need be. And these principles are based on the importance of this work coming from the community, representing the community, and having trusted individuals involved. So the first principle here really focuses on birth workers as being community-based, meaning that they are either trusted members of the community, come to birth work with a broad range of complex experiences that mirror the community, or have a deep understanding of these communities. Secondly, the continuity of care, providing support and resources to the family from birth through the baby's first year. This is really crucial to implement the continuity of care, and we touched on it a little bit earlier. But really, the relationships with clients are long lasting, and they just aren't limited to 6 months or even a year. We know from our experience, my own experience, that long-term substantial relationships are built between doulas and clients. And oftentimes it blurs the line between traditional doula role, traditional client role. We have informal and intimate bonds of care with our clients. And because we are based out of our community, we can really form these important relationships with clients that goes beyond traditional doula client roles. We know this improves the quality of care our clients receive. They feel more comfortable communicating with us. They bond with us more regularly. They feel like they can depend on us. And oftentimes we know our clients before entering doula-client relationships. So many of us are activists or involved in other community spaces like churches, yoga teachers, nurses, and more. And this really allows doulas to have an intimate and informal relationship with their clients. Our clients are our sisters, nieces, best friends, neighbors, classmates. And doula care really represents this personal and sacred experience and relationship. During our interview, Siobhan reflected on her relationship with her doula, telling me the work that doulas do is such a labor of love and so personal. So it's like that kind of energy and stuff. You want the right person to be somebody who is going to be involved in your life on a personal level, like helping you give birth, deliver your child into the world. The client sees the importance of having a personal relationship with their doula. They are not just doulas. They're people who have watched you grow into a parent and supported you along your way. Here's another quote that really embodies that relationship between clients and community-based doulas. Laisa, a Black doula, nurse, mother, and grandmother, told me in an interview, "I've been at so many deliveries. I've probably cried at every delivery. It's a rewarding feeling to watch and be a part of someone bringing a life into the world and making sure that the person is treated as equal as their counterparts, no matter what color they are. So if you have a passion for it and that you are willing to continue to learn, then that's something that you could do. I really enjoy what I do. And like I said, I've cried at almost every delivery, and it's just a good feeling to be able to help women transition into parenthood." This really highlights this intimate, informal form of care and relationship between doulas and their clients. And again, this is something that most individuals do not have within their maternal health care experiences. This is the last principle that I will focus on today. And this principle really focuses on the collective aspect of doula care that separates community-based doulas and traditional doulas. So this principle focuses on the value collective models of care enable doulas to support groups of pregnant people together as they build lasting relationships during the transition to parenthood. Prenatal and postpartum care offered in communal spaces to support maternal health education and healing between pregnant families facing disparities or adversities in reproductive care. These communal healing spaces are used to mitigate the effects of toxic environments and increase community-based problem solving. The collective nature of the work in Syracuse and of community-based doulas really sets it apart from other forms of doula work. Many doulas don't have the availability or access to doula collectives, especially ones made up of brown and Black folks. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to be involved in this work. It's not only about community for the clients, it's also about community for the doulas. And so for clients, the collective model is definitely a benefit to our work. It's basically having more than one doula. If a doula doesn't have a question or isn't familiar, she can turn to another doula for support. Here, Maya, a Black doula client, reflected on how this collective work was seen in her own care. She told me, I would ask a lot of questions too, and she would answer them, or if she couldn't, she would go ask another doula, for example, or something like that, especially when it came to breastfeeding. So we can see the importance of having a doula collective. It can provide another resource and allows us to continue the quality of care and go beyond what a singular doula may provide. So another example where a doula reflected on her own benefit of being a part of collective is to not go through this work alone. We have a sisterhood, a collective action plan that gives us the ability to support one another. During our interview, Tree provided another important perspective about being a part of the doula collective. She told me there are certain things that I was able to reach out to the doula collective for. And even you, Mariel, if you said, hey, I got this information, try this, and everyone else that is under the doula collective. We don't know everything, so we bounce ideas and thoughts off of each other. And as well as what is normal and what is no longer normal, because COVID has brought so much out. COVID has been a big learning transition period for doulas as regulations, procedures, and standards of practice have changed rapidly, and sometimes change depending on the hospital or birth facility. So being able to communicate with the collective on what happened at a birth, which hospital was giving hesitation to allowing that doula to appear is really vital to providing care to our clients. During my experience as a doula, I got to actually have time in this collective mindset and being what is termed a backup doula. And essentially that is having another doula support during labor if the first doula needs a rest or needs reinforcements. This was really amazing experience, especially during my early days as a doula. This image actually shows me shadowing Sequoia at the time, and I was able to get some experience at this birth, supporting this laboring mother. So essentially, I would not have had this hands-on experience and learned things like counter pressure and other specific doula things without being able to shadow Sequoia. And that is really an invaluable piece of this collective model. And we also focus on dueling the doula. So this essentially is looking to support people of color and doulas of color working with birthing people of color. We need to make space for each other. We need to debrief and break down our experiences. We need to be able to ask each other advice or questions. Many of us have gone through our own reproductive injustices that have led to this work. So having space and holding that space for one another is an important part of being a part of this collective. It's really something we learn during our trainings at Village Birth International, and we go through this sharing positive and negative experiences. And that is how we doula the doula. Many of the doulas I interviewed mentioned the importance of having this model of doulaing the doula and collective action. Laisa told me during her interview, I love the fact that we have such a sisterhood with the doulas. The doulas I work with, it doesn't matter whether I've talked to someone yesterday or I talked to them 2 months ago, we don't skip a beat. It doesn't matter if I need something or if they need something, you know we're there for each other. And this also allows this work to move beyond birth and into the community in a collective way. We support each other while continuing to work with our clients and the community. We also engage the community through different events. So one of the events I was lucky enough to be a part of in planning and execution was the Black Healing Expo. This was a community event where Black health experts, including doulas, came together to educate the community on their services. It was also a way to uplift Black and other marginalized medical professionals in the area. The event was again held in the south side of Syracuse because we wanted to ensure that communities could access the information and attend this event. And the event was a way to demonstrate that doula care really isn't just limited to pregnancy. It's something that needs to benefit the entire community. For our collective, it's always been important to make Black health the focus in all aspects, because that is really the only way to address health inequities, including maternal health care. These two goals cannot be separated. It's definite that care for the community in this way can have long-term influences on health access and care for Black and Brown folks. Reflecting on the many events that Sequoia and myself and other doulas developed in Syracuse, you can see how this birth work really goes beyond the traditional idea of a doula. And so during our interview, Sequoia told me, I think the reason I like community-based models is because it takes the onus off of community members to do all this changing, and it puts more responsibility on people with education to reach people and meet them where they're at. And I learned so much. It's not just about me going around and teaching people, but I also learned so much from the community about how to present information. This is again connected to our doula collective's notion that the health of the community has a direct influence on maternal health care. So we must go beyond birth to address larger influences of health. Many doulas are also involved in activism such as Black Lives Matter. This again is tied to our work because it is rooted in Black liberation. Having visibility in movements like BLM is really connected to the goals of doula work, because you cannot liberate Black folks without addressing the inequities of health that they face. It is also how some clients have come to know us as community birth workers. They see us involved in these political organizing movements in their city. So during our interview, Charisse noted to me that I actually met my doula a few times through Black Lives Matter stuff. You know, she's super active in the community. I know I wanted her to be my doula because she's super active and I just knew she would be great. From this perspective, Charisse, like other clients, became familiar with their doulas because of their activist work and how this is related to their specific values. This quote by Ashley really summarizes how birth work in Syracuse is shifting and shaping new experiences of maternal health, especially for Black birthing people. So Ashley in this interview compared her first experience without a doula with her second experience where she was supported by a doula. She stated, my first birth, they induced me, they had me bedbound, they didn't give me options to move or shift. I was under medication. I don't really know what I was thinking, saying, what I agreed to. I didn't want to get an epidural, but I got it. It was just a lot of miscommunication, me feeling like basically I was being told what to do versus having a voice. My doula told me you didn't have to do those. Like, you don't have to be checked. Whatever you allow is what they are supposed to do. And I didn't really understand that the first time. So the first time I was just being bossed around the room and no one was listening, versus the second time when I said, I want to have my C-section. my doctor listened. So from this quote, it's clear that having a doula changed Ashley's experience dramatically. From having little to no voice during her first birth to feeling empowered to let her provider know that she desired during her birth. This is what we want to see happening with our clients. They become a part of the decision-making, not just the provider's decision. We need to center our clients. And so some important barriers that I have seen in my experience have really included payment, so lack of ability for people to be paid or to pay a doula. And as we know, most of the doulas that I specifically work with are Black parents themselves and part of a community, and they need to have sustainable living wages. We can also see the importance of having the availability of culturally similar doulas, people that share your own perspectives, your own background and identities, and then also having a lack of knowledge about doulas. However, we definitely have been seeing an increase in people knowledgeable about doula care. And lastly, regulation from the state, which can hinder some forms specifically of community-based doula care. So one doula I interviewed, Alice, mentioned her barriers, especially payment. And so she told me the importance of being compensated as a doula. And she specifically stated that we need to be included in health insurance, but also we need to be included for folks that don't have health insurance. So somehow being paid through the state possibly. She really went on to mention that she has clients who she actually takes on regardless of their ability to pay, which is extremely common in community-based doulas. However, if they are taking on clients and not being able to support themselves, many doulas cannot focus on this work full time, and we need them to. Clients are also aware of many of the barriers doulas face, including regulation. Shakira here, a Black doula client, really focused on the importance of not regulating community doulas. She said community doulas do a lot of stuff out of the care of the community, and I feel like that shouldn't be regulated. If you have your heart set on helping the community, I don't think that needs to be regulated, and the state should stay out of it. Again, this is really emphasizing that doula clients do not believe there is anything positive to come of state regulation. And indeed, we need to be focusing on making these resources more accessible. Other solutions, which we have definitely touched on today as well, are the expansion of out-of-hospital options, so ensuring birthing folks, no matter their income or place of residence, can have different birthing options, as well as diversifying medical providers. So this includes their identities, having more racially diverse, gender diversity, having more sexuality diversity representation, and more, as well as the availability of home birth midwives and other providers that may not be quote unquote medical providers or OBGYNs. And so I saw definitely an increase in doula clients that were interested in having home births because of COVID. And a lot of them, including Jasnia, who I quoted here, actually sought this and sought doula care because they saw that as their first step into achieving a home birth. So we know that many clients actually view doulas as supporting home births and know that that is how they can turn to educate themselves and better prepare themselves to have a home birth. This quote by another doula, Esther, really focuses on her perspective on the lack of diversity we have for providers. And so she really emphasizes the notion that if you don't have somebody that understands your home life, your culture, specific references around your experiences, there's going to be a huge disconnect, and doulas fill that gap. So we can see that doulas is definitely a way to address the lack of diversity. However, we still need important conversations and changes about who our providers are and how we can shift demographics to reflect birthing communities. So moving forward, I see a lot of hope for the future with community-based birth work. I see how this birth work is becoming more accessible to all folks, no matter what reproductive health support they desire. I'm seeing more and more marginalized birth workers, Black, Brown, Indigenous, and folks from the LGBTQIA+ community, and we need you as birth workers. I'm seeing more and more progress in the United States and New York specifically in trying to address barriers to home birth and out-of-hospital options. In Syracuse, we can really see the future of reproductive wellness in the establishment of the Sankofa Reproductive Health and Healing Center that has actually celebrated their first year anniversary this month. So definitely check them out. That is where I see the future of reproductive justice work in Syracuse. And I just want to say thank you to everybody for hearing my talk today. Each birth for myself and my fellow birth workers is really intentional and rooted in equitable care and desire for liberation of all marginalized folks. This work is going beyond birth to provide resources into the community. There's a need for us to have more of this care locally, nationally, and internationally. And while birth work is just a piece of the solution, we know there is a need to address the underlying systemic oppressions that operate in our everyday lives and have impacts on our health. So this quote from Sequoia that I'll leave y'all with really emphasizes the goal of localized birth work. When we say we envision reproductive justice, that means that we're envisioning a world where Black birth and people are able to actualize full liberation through sisterhood, sexual wellness, education, ancestral practices, and intuitive care work. So thank you to everybody for being here today, especially Village Birth International, Doula for a Queen, my doula collective sisters, as well as the Rochester Sexual and Reproductive Justice Coalition.
All right, everybody, we're going to open this up to a Q&A now. So if you have any cues you'd like aid, feel free to either raise your hand and you can call on people to unmute them or pop them into the chat.
Thanks, everyone.
So far, our chat is only accolades, which is phenomenal. But I have a question for you. I know you said you're recently back to Rochester, started in Rochester. Is there anything in Rochester that you would say is equivalent or similar to some of the birthing coalitions that you mentioned? So specifically like the Village Birth International?
So I am not familiar, and I would definitely love to get more connected with those resources in Rochester. So if anybody does know anything, I would love to hear it. But I definitely want to become more involved in what is happening in Rochester. I think what I have found is a lot of these kind of collectives have been in really specific locations, and Syracuse, I think, is a interesting case because it's one of the smaller cities where we can see that happening. But if you go to like a Los Angeles or New York City or larger cities like that, you can see definitely the growth of these coalitions. So hopefully, you know, Rochester will also be on its way. And I know we have some brilliant Black and Brown birth workers here today, as well as in Rochester in general. Oh, I see one question in the comments. Okay, so have you found that many Black and Brown doulas find themselves fighting microaggressions during birth? Yes, I definitely have found, unfortunately, many instances of this. One specific instance I can think of was a doula essentially had to explain how a security person was threatening to a Black birthing person. That birthing person had been previously incarcerated. So the presence, when they're already under, you know, in a vulnerable state in labor, of essentially a form of police or something like that in their space, was actually a trigger for them. So in that instance, the doula actually went forward and explained this to the hospital staff, and essentially was able to get that security guard on a different side of the floor, so they weren't directly, you know, right in front of that doorway and things like that. So that's just a really small example, but I think there's countless times where Black doulas and brown doulas, especially during COVID, we have noticed, have been dealing with some microaggressions. There's more of an insistence that they have paperwork or proof that they are a doula than some of their white counterparts and things like that. So we've actually developed name tags, and we have little cards to bring with us. We've had to get a hold of a stair who kind of operates as the leader of Sankofa Heals, to get her to talk to the charge nurse to allow us in. So all of these different instances have been points of microaggression, definitely. I see another question. So it says, can you talk more about your work at Sankofa? So I am not with Sankofa currently, just because this is such community-based work. And since I am transitioning back to living in Rochester and not living in Syracuse, I kind of transition out of that work. But I was within the collective, Sankofa Collective specifically, from about January till September of 2021. And there is so much important work that is being done by the collective. I definitely urge y'all to follow them on Instagram if you can, or Facebook. They have a lot of great resources. They also promote a lot of different aspects of their work. So they have what are called Birth Song, and that is a really amazing writing workshop that brings together people with different birthing experiences. So even if you haven't given birth physically in a childbirth sense, you may have given birth to other things, you may have mothered in different ways, as they say. So this becomes a space for people to actually kind of tackle important topics. So we usually go through the reproductive life cycle, beginning at menstruation. We have writing workshops on that. We have writing workshops on pregnancy, on childbirth, on postpartum, as well as menopause. And just having a space for people who have uteruses to discuss these things that they have been through together, especially with brown and Black people, is amazing. We also have co-mothering. And co-mothering is essentially a space where mothers are able to come together. So it has been newer moms who don't really have a lot of mom friends, right? Who kind of need to build that community within their own city and are able to connect with people that are going through similar experiences, right? So it's a great space for people to kind of link up and form bonds with other parents around them, talk about similar struggles and things like that. And then we also have our childbirth education classes, which I mentioned earlier. Those are fantastic. And if you have any parents that are looking for a childbirth education class, they are free. They are virtual right now. So definitely a great way to connect with Sankofa. I can put their information in the chat also if people want, but they are really adamant about posting on Instagram. So anytime they have events or workshops or anything like that, it's all posted on their Instagram. And I believe they have a listserv as well. So if you would like to get on that listserv, I can kind of send out information where they regularly post when they are doing their workshops. They also have Wellness Wednesday, which is amazing. And it's a space where people can come in from the community and actually get physical supplies. So we have diapers, we have lactating necessities, essentially anything you could need for those childbirth purposes.
It was also asked in the chat, how can we find more info on this writing if we know of some folks who maybe want to be a part of it?
Yes, definitely. So definitely through their Instagram is the #1. I think they have a listserv sign up through that Instagram, if I'm not mistaken. But they are really good at posting constantly. So you'll see when they have these writing workshops. I believe they're on break right now. They usually start up February, March, and they go for a couple months, and it's once a month that they meet. And it's such an amazing experience. I've been a part of Birth Songs since the first Birth Song was created, and right now they are virtual. So this is something that no matter where you are, you can access this. But if you are able to join this writing workshop, I highly suggest trying to join in the beginning. From the first day of the writing workshop. It's an amazing way to build community, meeting regularly with the same people, having discussions and feeling comfortable in those discussions. So it's such an impactful way to kind of go through your own personal experiences and be in a space where people are affirming those experiences, and then also hold that space for somebody else.
Thank you so much. I did put St. Kofi Hill's information on Instagram, their social media handle, and I did go to the link in their bio. One of the first things is sign up for free childbirth and postpartum education series. You can schedule a doula consultation, schedule Wellness Wednesday appointments, and so on and so forth. Mariel, this was amazing. You are phenomenal. So I just wanna give you your kudos the whole time. I'm back on this screen screaming. We're gonna remove your spotlight so you can, yes, I love it.
No, thank you all. This is such an amazing conference and so needed. And I'm really excited. You know, I'm going to be done with my PhD soon, and I'm looking to get more involved in this kind of community work. So I'm so excited to, you know, make a community space with y'all, here with y'all, and then also kind of take this into the future. So this is so amazing. And especially to you guys at Roc.SRJ and Sarah too.
Yes, our lovely very own Sarah connected us, and we are so thankful. And it's made me think this whole time about how now we can start connecting Rochester to Syracuse and all of those folks who live in between, who may need services, right? Because sometimes when we tend to think about folks who need things, we, those of us who may live in cities or live in the city or work in the city, those are the folks we concentrate on. And sometimes there are folks in between that also need services that do not know that all of these may exist. We do have about like 7 more minutes, 8 more minutes or so. So I do want to open the floor if anybody else has anything that they would want to say or any questions. Because if you don't know me by now, I will dominate the conversation. Well, I guess, Mariel, what sort of work will you be doing here in Rochester?
So I am currently actually working at Brockport. So I'm teaching right now.
Beautiful.
Yes, it's so ironic because Sarah and I met in a women and gender studies class, and I'm teaching women and gender studies right now. So it's so, yes, I know. So it's so awesome to kind of have this come full circle for me. But I'm already thinking about, where my next passion project lies, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm finding really the importance, I think a lot of people are touching on, of out of hospital birthing options, and how, you know, we need to diversify the types of midwives we can have access to, as well as making sure that those midwives are reflecting our communities. So I'm really passionate about getting more involved in that kind of advocacy work as well. And we know that with the state legislature, there's been a lot of kind of momentum behind those bills. So that's definitely where I see the next, you know, steps taking me.
Beautiful, beautiful. I don't know if you saw in the chat, but Damien shared there's a lot of Brockport alum here in SRJ. A lot of us were students there, and so we are very excited to know that you are there and that those folks are learning from you. There are a lot of folks here who are working on the possibility of a birthing center here in Monroe County. And they are working so hard and so diligently to make this a possibility. And I am so excited that I even know them, and that I get to see the work that they are doing and that we get to support them. And so once again, we want to say thank you. There are a bunch of kudos in the chat, and we look forward to further collaborations.